You look at the role of Gujars
Professor
in the
Kapil
wars
Kumar,
of 65 and
pleasure
71.
that you have recalled so many instances in history. Let me bring in Sanjay Kumar as well. Sanjay Kumar, I'm looking at the numbers. This is clearly an outreach to the strong 10.42 scheduled tribes population of India. 10.42 crore scheduled tribes population, which are spread across many states. But of course, as we have seen, and all political parties do that, this is about political dividends as well, electoral dividends as well. The BJP certainly is hoping that of the 4 states that will go to polls in the next 1.5 years, which includes Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Gujarat and Chhattisgarh, where it is 128 seats reserved for scheduled tribes, the BJP had won just 35 in the last assembly elections. Do you think it will benefit them electorally as well?
One can imagine that such a move of the BJP is going to help BJP in mobilizing the tribal vote in its favor. But Maria, one should also note that tribal vote has already shifted in favor of BJP in a big way. If we look at the Lok Sabha elections and look at the 2014 and 2019 Lok Sabha elections, in 2019 elections, nationally 44% of the tribal vote went to BJP. Prior to 2014, it used to be in the range of 20-22%. So BJP's support base among the tribal vote nationally for the national election has doubled. It's almost reached 50%, 44-45%. If we look at the state assembly election, yes, BJP doesn't manage to mobilize as many tribal votes as it manages for the Lok Sabha election, but still it is a sizable number of votes which BJP has been getting among the tribals. But I still believe that such a move of BJP is going to help BJP in consolidating its tribal support base, especially for the state assembly election. You rightly mentioned 4 states goes to poll. All these states have a very sizable number of tribal voters. And I think BJP is certainly eyeing on the tribal votes for these state assembly elections as well as for the big election which takes place in 2024.
And Sanjay Kumar, historically speaking, the tribals have largely been with the Congress. The shift of the tribals happened towards Prime Minister Modi per se. It was the Modi voter that emerged, keeping in mind welfareism. If that welfareism card is working on ground, what does this mainstreaming, because BJP is saying that this is visible mainstreaming of the tribals with the top constitutional office which will be occupied by a tribal woman, someone who has risen in the ranks, someone who understands what does poverty mean. She is coming from the Santhal community. So she has that understanding, and hence the policies of the government will also be seen in that direction. So if the welfareism vote has already moved, what does this symbolism mean?
No, I think this symbolism, what does it bring about?
Yes.
Once we have a tribal woman as the president of this country, I think I can already see that there is an enthusiasm among the tribals of at least in the North India Hindi heartland, getting a sense that we are going to have a first tribal women president of this country. So a connect, people will start feeling a connect. And I think if this connect, this feeling of being connected or being having a person at the top position of this country, I think that's going to make a huge impact in the morale of the tribal. If some of them have feeling that they are not in the mainstream, which I don't believe, I think a lot of them still believe that they are in the mainstream of the country. I don't see a sense of alienation among them. But if there is some sense of alienation among them, I think a lot of that alienation is going to go away with this symbolism which BJP has, used for putting up a tribal women as the presidential candidate.
Okay. Radhika, 2 battles, 2017 and 2022, and I'm looking at these 2 battles. Ramnath Kovind, again, someone who has risen in the ranks, comes from a very, very humble background. Someone comes, he's of course a Dalit president, and versus Meera Kumar, who has a particular background, comes from a family. The BJP would say that this is a dynasty politics at play. The other one, this battle that we are seeing, Yashwant Sinha versus someone again coming from a very humble background. Do you think the BJP, when it projects this symbolism of its candidature, women, tribal, but also someone who understands what a huge population of this country goes through on a daily basis. That struggle for life, that struggle for survival.
Yeah, certainly, her life story, her rise in politics in the BJP. I mean, it's really been a hard luck story
Yes.
for her.
Yes.
She lost her son, she lost her husband. I mean, it's not been smooth sailing at all for her. And she has achieved quite a bit on her own. I mean, let's not take that away
Absolutely.
from her. That narrative, yes, it is moving. It will resonate with the tribals and also the underempowered sections, not just the Adivasis. So to that extent, yes, she is going to have an impact. However, since she holds the office of the president, she obviously cannot campaign in any of the elections, just like Mr. Kovind could not.
Yes.
Of course, Ramnath Kovindji did address a couple of meetings and public functions in Uttar Pradesh. And if I were to say that, did he have an impact on the Dalit votes? Did the Dalit votes necessarily come to the BJP because of Ramnath Kovind? But he was one of the inputs. If the Dalit votes did come to the BJP, did gravitate towards the BJP in the Hindi heartland, it was also because of very hard work that the BJP has done on the ground in terms of getting sections of which were not with the party, and also in terms of living down its image as a party of as an urban party of the well-off. So similarly here, it just depends upon how the narrative travels across the country. You have rightly spoken about the states that go to polls and the sizable tribal population that all of them contain. So together with Draupadi Murmu's projection, the BJP will also have to do a lot of work on the ground in Gujarat. Gujarat is the first election that is coming, and there the Adivasi vote has tended to go with the Congress, at least in the assembly elections. So I think the BJP will have to work very hard on these sections. And yes, I mean, if you see the recent inductees into the BJP in Gujarat, there are some important tribal leaders who have come into the party from the Congress. So the BJP is acutely aware of the fact that it needs to work much more on its Adivasi base in Gujarat, and it is doing that, working towards that end. And similarly, I think it will also work in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh.
Okay.
So Draupadi Murmu, I would say, is one strand in the overall
messaging of the BJP
to win over the Adivasis.
Yes, and also a messaging which begins in 2014, where the BJP is out there to send a message that they are not a Hindi belt party. This is a party which is looking at expanding its footprints. And if anything, as far as this candidature is concerned, the first Odia to be the president on 21st, potentially again, I would say.